All right, guys, chapter 11 of Among the Impostors was a little different. Luke actually started to make some realizations that things weren't what they seemed at Hendrick School for Boys. One of those things was how the boys acted in class. Like some boys were just drawing, or they were rocking back and forth in their seat, holding their legs. They weren't paying attention. Like no one's really engaged in what they're supposed to be doing. And then he noticed also in the hallway that there's a couple boys who stare back at him when he stares at them, like only two or three. But most of the boys, when he looks at them directly, they put their eyes down. Chapter 12. Luke made himself wait an entire week before he went back to the woods. But in that time, no matter how closely he paid attention to everything, the mysteries only seemed to multiply. For example, by the end of the week, Luke was even more baffled by the lack of windows than ever before, because he discovered there wasn't a single window in the entire place. To learn that, Luke had to make himself figure out the floor plan of the entire school. He had to be sure that he peeked into every classroom, every sleeping room, every office. One morning at breakfast, he even pretended to get turned around and plowed straight into the kitchen. Two cooks screamed, and Luke was given a stern lecture and a record 10 demerits, but he found out what he wanted to know. Even the kitchen lacked windows. Why? Why would anyone build a windowless school? Luke wondered if there had been something unusual about his family's house, that it had windows, and he just accepted it as a norm. But no, all the houses and the schools and other buildings Luke had seen in books had windows. And when the government built Jen's neighborhood, all the houses there had windows. And Jen's family and their neighbors were barons. If barren houses had windows, why didn't barren schools? Luke couldn't figure out why the other boys either. There were rocking boys in most of his classes. He realized now. Several times, Luke practically hypnotized himself staring at them, but they seemed harmless enough. The boys who worried Luke were the ones he called the starers, the ones who looked back when he looked at them. All the hall monitors were starers. So was Jackal Boy. Luke tried to tell himself that the stares bothered him only because he spent so much time in hiding. Of course, he didn't like being stared at. They were probably just acting normal, and he was in danger of giving away his real identity by getting disturbed by it. Somehow, he couldn't believe that. All night when Jackal Boy tormented him, Luke kept his eyes trained carefully on the ground, but he could feel Jackal Boy's gaze on the side of his face as defiantly as he would feel a slap or a punch. Say, I'm an Ixnay of the worst order, Jackal Boy ordered him as usual one evening. Luke mumbled the words. He wondered what would happen if he looked up and unleashed his questions on Jackal Boy. Why do you stare? Why are there any windows? Why do we never go outside? Why was the door open that one day? And finally, are there any other shadow children here? Ah! But of course, he couldn't ask Jackal Boy. Jackal Boy thought it was funny to make Luke wave his arms for 5 minutes straight. Jackal Boy was only interested in humiliating Luke. He probably think it was amusing to tell the population police, I know where you can find a third child. How big is my reward? So Luke bit his tongue and gritted his teeth and touched his finger to his nose 50 times as ordered. He jogged in place until his legs ached. He reached for his toes again and again until Jackal Boy said in a bored voice, Get out of my sight. Luke crawled into bed, unsure whether to get relieved that he hadn't blown his cover or disappointed that he hadn't found the answers to his questions. That night in bed, he was too busy puzzling over all his mysteries to even think about whispering his own name. When he had his pretend conversations, he asked advice instead of offering apologies. What do you think, Jen? What's wrong with this place? Is there something wrong? You went out into the world on fake passes all the time. Do people everywhere act like the boys at Hendrix? And Mother and Dad, what's your opinion? Is it okay if I go out into the woods again? But it was ridiculous to feel like he had to get permission from his parents he'd never see again, or to ask advice from a friend who was dead. It was just too bad that was all he had. Luke swallowed a lump in his throat. He couldn't solve the school's mysteries, but he was going back to the woods no matter what. I like how Luke is really like trying to dig into this and figure this out, and he's doing like his own little mental investigation in his mind. It's pretty neat. Do you guys have some questions about the Hendrick School for Boys? Do things not add up for you? Not adding up for me. Let's see.